Now, I would suggest to both Schiff, Nadler, and Nancy Pelosi that to be effective, to move or at least shine light on what's happening with the impeachment, those people who are just paying absolutely no attention to the atrocities, the violation of the Constitution, the obstruction of justice, and the lying that Trump is doing, and also that he's got all his minions doing, the obstruction of justice by Attorney General Barr, the outlawing activity of Rudy Giuliani, and the rest of the House of Representatives, Devin Nunes and Matt Gaetz, that you need to include white supremacy as a part of what's happening. And let me explain to you what I don't mean to be flippant about this, but if you look at most of the what's happening and what has happened over the past 50 years in presidential elections, the matter of racism is always included about the mistreatment of blacks or African Americans or Negroes or colors or whatever you might choose to refer to them. I prefer Hamites and Canaanites. But even now, when you look at the attempt to try to get Pete Buttigieg into mainstream national polling, they realize that he has a racial problem with a racial group, with the Negro or the African American or colored or whoever. And so racism is a part of the way the Democrats play their cards. And it's always an appeal to racism. And one of the reasons why the long-legged Mac Daddy Obama was successful, because it was the epitome of racism. He was half white and half black. So it was a beautiful, if you will, situation for those liberals. But in order I think what Schiff ought to do and Pelosi is that they need to point out that this is about white supremacy. And the reason why, and this is markedly different from the Watergate issue with Nixon, who broke into the Watergate Hotel and then lied and covered it up. Okay, all right, fine. And then Howard Baker and Barry Goldwater and others came to him and told Nixon, you got to give it up. They did that because it was about a benign or a neutral issue. You're not going to get the Republicans, not one of them, to break. It isn't because they know the Constitution is being violated. They know that Trump is obstructing justice like you won't believe, like a Mack truck running over a skateboard. They know that's what that boy is doing, but they're protecting the white race. This isn't for Matt Gaetz and for the Republicans down the line, including Mike Pence and Bill Barr and all the others, Mike Pompeo. This is not about the Constitution. The Constitution takes second place to white superiority. Now, you can say what you want, you can deny this all you will, but these boys don't care. It isn't that they don't, I shouldn't say don't care. It isn't that the Constitution is not important to them, but they are losing white authority in America. And that's why they are obfuscating the Constitution to not they don't preserve the Constitution. What they are holding out for is for white supremacy. It's racist. And until somebody gets up and says it, and it's not going to make them change their vote, but I think it ought to be a part of the historical event that they are simply, listen, if this was not, if white people were still in charge of all political events across America the way they were 50 years ago, they'd put Trump out of all. In fact, they would have never voted for this tribulation, if you will, casino owner, this coochie grabber, this pathological liar, this pathological degenerate. 50 years ago, they never would have voted for him in the first place. But right now, white people see themselves losing, and I don't mean to be racist, and I'm tired of having to try to explain myself. I didn't have to explain myself when I was talking about black people and Obama. But my friend, let me tell you something. These white people, they're trying to stay on top of their game And they don't give a damn about the Constitution. The Constitution gonna give one man one vote. The Constitution gonna make every man equal, and they can't deal with that. They can't deal with equality. The white people that are following and supporting Trump, they call them rednecks. Their issue is they are no longer supporters of one man, one vote. They realize that if that's the case, they're going to be the underdogs from now on out, white people. Now, you know, I want to play a clip that was brought up on Brian Stelter's event the other day regarding the red state Christians, that they don't even believe in the gospel anymore, and they don't. The Southern Baptist churches aren't preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ anymore. They're not. They're preaching the gospel of white supremacy. And I'll tell you what, I'll let this author explain it to you because they can do it a whole lot better than I can. But keep in mind, whatever you do, this is not like Richard Nixon and the Constitution being violated, obstruction of justice. These white people are dead serious that they no longer can stand. They cannot allow the Constitution to be one man, one vote, and there be equal 3 parts of power, oversight power by the Congress over the presidency. They can't do that because white people are going to lose their power. And that's why they're acting the way they're acting. Mr. Engineer, roll that clip, all right? It's going to take a little time to set it up, but roll it, Mr. Engineer.
Presidents are not kings, a federal judge said this week in a ruling opening the door to former White House counsel Don McGahn possibly testifying before the House. So President Trump is not a king, but perhaps his spiritual influence is far greater. Just take a look at what's been said recently.
Everything happens for a reason. And the way I see it is look at the results of Donald Trump as president.
Mr. President, I know there are people that say, you know, you said you were the chosen one. And I said, you were.
As I stand before you today, I see the greatest president in history. Of course he is. He was chosen by God.
So what are these clips about? And sometimes these clips go viral, they get mocked on social media, but there's something important here. And I think the press overlooks the power of religion at its peril. Let me bring in journalist, author, and pastor Angela Denker. She knows this firsthand. She's out with a book titled Red State Christians. She traveled the country for a year speaking with Christian voters about their faith and their faith in Trump. And she's with me now. Angela, these recent clips, Rick Perry and others, what do they signify?
Just the extent to which the American church has lost the gospel of Jesus and has become caught up in a gospel distortion over Christian nationalism, which says that our God is no longer the God of the Bible, but a God who makes America strongest. And
you found that in your reporting across the country?
I did, yeah. You know, people, I heard that from a Southern Baptist pastor. His name's Dean and Sarah. He told me in Washington, D.C. at the March for Life, he said there's a gospel distortion happening, particularly in the Southern Baptist Convention. But I found this in churches from Appalachia to Orange County, that pastors in particular have failed to teach the actual teachings of Jesus, which were not about power or wealth or money, but about loving one another, about giving your money to the poor. And instead, American churches have become caught up in wealth and power and has led American Christians to be so entirely focused on our own power and our own money, and of course has led to a president who exemplifies many of those things.
And the faith in Trump that you found in your reporting, is that partly why he's brought in Paula White, the televangelist, as a religious advisor?
Yeah, I attended Paula White's church and met with her after the service in Florida. And Paula White is an example of somebody who really believes that following the gospel of Jesus is about power and is about money. And she has become close to Trump because her ministry was built on some of the same things Trump's prestige has been built on, which is television, which is celebrity. And as the American church has embraced a lot of these things, starting with megachurches where I served in Orange County, California, that has led to American Christians becoming enamored in the same way outside the church with celebrity and power and money over the story of Jesus.
Now, let me ask you, I only have about 30 seconds left, but the most important factor, the most important part of the religion beat that the national news media needs to pay attention to, what do you think it is?
I think the national news media needs to more deeply understand the actual story of Jesus and who Jesus really is. Jesus was somebody who was not at all like an earthly king, and God sent Jesus to remind the people of Israel that an earthly king was not what God intended. And Americans are getting caught up in the same kind of traps that the Hebrew people of the Old Testament were, which is waiting for an earthly king to bring us power. And that is not the story of Christianity. And I think a lot of religion journalists are missing that part.
Angela Denker, thank you so much. The book is...
All right, she spent a year crisscrossing America and going into Southern Baptist venues, examining their theology at present, and I think she's done a credible job. And I think the book is substantiated by facts and data that most people of us are aware of, and it's probably a real good read. And let me say this: I mean, this is not about the Constitution. America. What happens in Congress and what happens in the administration with the executive branch and even the judicial branch now with the Supreme Court justices is not based on the Constitution. Well, get this through your heads. This is about white supremacy. And white supremacy, of course, is a pejorative. It's an explosive term, and I know that it is, but I want you to listen. But if you let me beyond, white people are trying to save themselves. The hell with saving the Constitution. The hell with preserving democracy. The hell with that. White people are trying to save themselves, and they see Trump as sent by God to save them from the one man, one vote equality that the Constitution does provide for everybody. And let me finally say that it isn't going to work. It just isn't enough white people anymore to outnumber brown and black people on planet Earth. There just isn't, and their day is up. It's all over. The fat lady has been singing her behind off. She lost 100 pounds singing that it's all over for the white man. Now, I don't say that racist. I'm just telling you. Let me listen. If you're into the Trump thing, you know the reason why you're fighting is because you're trying to save. You're not trying to save the Constitution. You're not trying to preserve democracy. You're trying to save white people, and you know it. So I'm just agreeing with you. I'm not agreeing that there should be an effort to save white folk. I'm not agreeing with it. The same as I would say to black folk that they ought to get out of politics, thinking what politics and save black folk. Hell, that's what black folk did when they thought Obama could say. The biggest disappointment, I think, in black folk in the history of the world is the fact that Obama did nothing for them. Their hopes, Obama did nothing for them. It didn't work. And it ain't gonna work for you white folk either. This is a bit of a news blog we do looking at spiritual wickedness in high places for the most part, making some observations about it and giving people a biblical foundation to the way of interpreting rather than have Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham or Janine Pirro or Anderson Cooper or Rachel Maddow or Don Lemon, Rush Limbaugh interpret what's going on in the world. You come to me and I'll tell you based on what the Word of God says. They'll just give you their worldly, sinful view. But the Manning Report will tell you what God has said, whether to say yea or nay, whether to go or to stay. You'll be led by the word of Almighty God. Come to the Manning Report on a daily basis to interpret the spiritual wickedness in high places, because there's plenty of it that's going on. And so I'm the Lord's servant, James David Righteous Rebel Manning, and I'm here to serve you with news and information.